Social studies is an educational curriculum that combines several disciplines such as history, anthropology, religion, sociology, and others to help students to have a voice in a diverse society. The specific standard I am addressing for my unit plan is for the first grade. This first grade curriculum helps students to learn about their roles as members of a family and school community. The unit I am planning is called The History of My Family. Students will be able to understand that families have a past and they change over time. Some families' beliefs, customs, and traditions are based on families' histories, and people of diverse racial, religious, national, and ethnic groups transmit their beliefs, customs, and traditions. The essential questions that students should be able to answer at the end of this unit are: what is a family? How are families alike and different? How is a school like a family? What is diversity, and what would life be like if everyone was the same? After this unit, students will know about their own family histories and traditions. Students will be able to consider others' perspectives, develop respect for other cultures, and recognize their similarities and differences. The performance tasks that students will complete during this unit will be the students exploring their family heritage. They will research the country of their choosing and write 5 or more interesting facts about that country and/or culture on an index card. Other evidence I will be collecting in the process of this unit will be journal entries, pictures drawn, discussions we have as a class, and a graphic organizer such as this one. Some learning activities I have planned for this unit are assessing the students' prior knowledge by asking them to write a reflection in their journals. I will also cover a large bulletin board with pictures of families of different configurations, cultures, and origins. It will have families that they know of, such as a children's show family. I will also display pictures of my own family and eventually their families as well. This will be a way to display everyone's family in a unique way. It shows how families can differ, but that is okay. Some other activities include reading the book Watch the Stars Come Out by Ricky Levison and having a discussion about it, and inviting family members in with their favorite family recipe to taste while the book Everybody Cooks Rice by Nora Dooley is read. Students are able to take home their very own cookbook at the end of this activity with their own illustrations. They will also be read Little Mama Forgets by Robin Cruz, Daddy Makes the Best Spaghetti by Anna Grossnickel-Hines, and Jonathan and His Mommy by Irene Smalls. From these stories, students will be able to collect more information on what families do. They will then be able to create their own mini book on what their family does. This will give the students a chance to explore how families help them to meet their basic needs of food, shelter, clothing, and love. I also plan for my students to be making family trees with their own families or school families. I plan to talk about my family to encourage students who want to know a little bit more about their families. They will be interviewing a family member and sharing their findings with the class the following day. The last of my learning activities I will use to demonstrate on how a lesson plan is written. To start, I look at the context of my classroom. This is where I'm able to see where I need to make adjustments for certain students. I can also see the context of my classroom for a possible boy-girl pairing and anything else that is needed for that particular lesson. The unit of instruction, essential questions, and standards can all be found on the unit. This is where planning a unit ahead of time is important. It is pertinent to explore these essential questions in your lesson as well as the standards. The next section in my lesson is student objectives in behavioral terms. It is important to have this near the top of your lesson plans because these are your goals and aims for the lesson. My personal opinion is to write these after your lesson is planned because these should correlate to each lesson specifically. I like to see my lessons before deciding what I expect my students to do. This I believe is true for the following 2 sections as well, which are materials and resources and academic language. An example of my objectives for this lesson is students will be able to consider others' perspectives by answering questions in a group setting at 100% competency. The academic language is chosen by what I believe will be important to understand for this lesson, the unit, and any words that could become of confusion for the students. For this lesson, it will be important for students to understand family, diversity, brother, sister, mother, father, and sibling. They will also need to know what working together means. To plan the activities that the students and myself will be doing for this lesson, I look at the learning activities I have planned for my unit. For coming up with these learning activities, I use a variety of different resources. I use my own ideas, the ideas of my coworkers, as well as any other knowledgeable resources. It is important to have both yourself and the students' activities planned in order to ensure the lesson to run smoothly. You want to make sure your students are actively engaged throughout the entire lesson. For my activity, I am reading the story The Crayon Box That Talked by Shane DeRolf. This story raises underlying philosophical questions about difference, cooperation, and identity. The students will listen to the book as I read. I will then create a mini discussion about the book with my class on these 3 ideas. The students will then go back to their seats and I will pass out different colored construction paper crayons that I would have cut out prior to the class. The students will then write about what makes them different and similar, as well as anything else relating to the discussion we have had. I will have a pre-made construction paper crayon box hanging, and each student will be able to place their crayon in this box. To further illustrate the concept of the book, I will use old crayons. I will pass out the old crayons to all the students to peel off the paper. The students will then watch while I use a fondue warming pot or microwave oven to melt the different colored crayons into different creations. Small molds will be used to make different shapes, and the students will watch as the colors blend together. This whole concept is used to illustrate how crayons work together in different ways. The students will discuss and make observations while I demonstrate the many combinations of colors. After knowing all of this information, I am then able to develop forms of assessment I will have planned throughout the lesson. For this lesson, I have only formative assessments planned. Formative assessments are low-stake assessments, meaning they don't count as much for the student's grade, nor do they cause stress to them. These assessments are designed to monitor students' learning by providing ongoing feedback that can be used by instructors to improve their teaching and by students to improve their learning. This is used as a communication tool between students, teachers, parents, and administrators alike. The formative assessments for this lesson are the students' discussion on diversity, their construction paper-made crayons, and finally their discussion on how differences can work together in different but good ways. Summative assessments are different. These are more high-stakes assessments that cause high levels of stress in the students. The summative assessment would normally come at the end of a unit to evaluate the student's learning by comparing it against some standard or benchmark. The summative assessment for this unit would be a written exam that tests for all understandings throughout the unit, or the presentation of their research on the country of their choosing. The next part of this lesson is to identify the social justice focus aspect of it. All lessons should have a social justice focus. The final section is the analysis of student learning and reflection. This can be done either after or before. If you choose to do it after, you can really reflect on how well your students did with the content itself as well as the activity. I did my reflection before on how I believe it is going to go. This way I am able to make adjustments before if necessary. Differentiated instruction is something to always keep in mind when making all lessons. It is important for educators to make accommodations for everyone in the classroom to be able to learn. Accommodations could be as simple as modifying the reading level for a student who struggles to read. Differentiated instruction takes diverse student factors into account when planning and delivering instruction. There are 3 different learning aspects to differentiate across. Those are content, process, and product. For differentiated instruction, it is important to look at Howard Gardner's 8 multiple intelligences. These are musical, visual spatial, intrapersonal, naturalist, logical mathematical, verbal linguistic, interpersonal, and bodily kinesthetic. By taking all of these into account, students are able to make their own connections to the ways in which they enjoy learning. In my lessons, I have differentiated content by using mini lessons throughout the unit as well as various texts and resources. I have also used concept-based teaching by having students think about the big picture of family and diversity and then relating it back to their lives. To differentiate process in my lessons, I've used journals, graphic organizers, and discussions. For differentiating products, I have students making their own mini books, illustrating their own cookbooks, researching and sharing about a country, drawing their own families, making their own family trees, interviewing a family member, and making a crayon to describe themselves. To connect with musical learners, I will play a variety of different cultural music when appropriate. A good time for this would be when taste testing foods from different places around the world. For the visual spatial learner, I have various drawings, pictures, colorful graphic organizers, and other visually pleasing aspects to my lessons. They will be doing many crafts for these lessons as well. For the intrapersonal learner, I have journal times and independent work. For those interpersonals, there are many opportunities to share and discuss their thoughts and opinions. The naturalists will enjoy the connection to nature through family trees and some of the books that were chosen. The verbal learners will enjoy having time to listen to stories, listen to what other students have to say, as well as writing out their own opinions. Logical mathematical students will enjoy that I have focused my lessons more towards forming the concepts first to then deal with the details of the subject. They will enjoy that investigation aspect of looking at their own family in a new way. Finally, bodily kinesthetic learners can enjoy that we aren't always stuck in one place. Many of my lessons involve moving from place to place, and there are experiments to help in their learning process. This process of lesson planning is important for all teachers to understand how to do. Students are the future, and we as educators should be providing the best that we can for them. I believe that with the right educator, students will be able to learn more than you would ever believe. Once students are able to make the right connections, a whole world of knowledge is able to be reached.